Hi, I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married.
With children.
We're going on 2 years of marriage.
But we've been together for 10.
He brought 2.
She brought 2.
Together, that's 4 kids.
That's way too many kids.
And we want to share what works for us.
And what doesn't.
For step-parents, co-parents, marriage, being your best self, managing work, family, friends, health. We're going to talk about...
everything.
You ready, babe?
Always.
Hey guys!
Hello, hello.
We are back with another Everything Always episode.
Super fun. We were a little nervous that we weren't going to get to do this week's episode due to the
cold vortex.
The cold vortex. Here in San Diego, I know it's a stretch to think that the cold vortex could actually get here to San Diego. We were a little nervous that it was going to get below 65 degrees and that we weren't going to be able to record. All right, I'm sorry for all of you in Chicago, Minneapolis who are experiencing those, minus 40 degree temperatures right now.
Yeah, we did have a storm though, and the airport got shut down, and we were on our way back from Utah, and we were in the air, and our flight from Utah back to San Diego, the pilot gets on and he's like, we're trying to stay in the air for a while because San Diego airport should be opening up soon, but we don't have enough gas, so we're going to have to stop in Phoenix.
Which is pretty much one of the biggest weather events we've had in San Diego.
It's pretty huge.
Ever?
Yeah.
Due to rain.
Yeah, rain. We
had
a lot of friends that are like their houses are flooded outside.
And I think we should be sensitive about this because a lot of people are dealing with real weather.
Like real weather.
But I want you to know, here in San Diego, if it gets below 60 degrees, basically everything stops.
Stay home from school. Shut down business.
It's a winter day. It's 48 degrees. All right, enough on that. Let's get back to it.
All right. We hope all of you are doing super well and enjoying the new year. We're like at a super running start with this year.
That sounds so cheery.
It's so cheery. I'm so happy. You got to get cheery sometimes because we talk about some topics that might not be so cheery. So we're trying to make them cheery.
A little more upbeat. Not as ba-ba-ba-ba.
You know what? That's exactly the sound that our kids hear when we go, hey guys, we're going to have a family meeting and we're going to talk about house rules. That's what happens in their head.
It's either that or Chloe plays the thing that goes wah, wah, wah.
She does. Chloe has the sound effects on her phone. So like as things happen.
Life DJ.
Yes.
It's dinner time. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. Or like somebody makes a joke and it's not good and it's like.
It's pretty terrible. All right.
Today's topic is house rules in a blended family and the do's and don'ts. And we're going to talk about what we've learned based on our experience and probably some research that we've done on what we should and should not do. If you're a step parent, well, bio or step parent, but especially like this is probably going to speak to a lot of step parents and how they deal with their stepchildren in terms of house rules and what your authority, what your role should look like. Discipline's like such a tricky thing when it comes to step parenting because you're trying to really preserve and build a relationship with your stepchild. And if you go hardcore into authority mode.
And it's talk about walking like a super thin line of being able to preserve the relationship while at the same time have order and unity in terms of like what the house rules are and your discipline styles.
Yeah.
Combine that with the fact that both kids are going to other households who have totally different rules.
Yeah.
Creates a turbulent environment a lot of the time. And I know that we've really struggled with this over the years.
We have. So I think one thing first to go into before even going into the do's and don'ts is, and you'll notice this theme throughout a lot of when Mike and I are talking about all of the things that have worked for us, always going back to that number one, the relationship between you and your spouse, because that foundation is so key. And I said on a couple episodes ago, that whole being the captains of your ship, because when things go wrong, if you guys aren't on the same page, your sailors are going to feel really insecure, like what's going on? We're looking to you to make things right. Your crew is basically feeling, very uncertain.
And there could be a mutiny if you don't do it right.
There totally can.
We're making
the crew starts fighting. Everybody has all these different opinions. Nobody's
here
on the same page.
So one thing I was going to mention in terms of house rules, I think, a non-blended family can struggle with parenting styles and being a unified front and making sure that the kids don't play you against each other and making sure that you're consistent with the things that you do so that they actually, create good habits. That's a struggle when it's your kid or kids between the two of you. Now throw in the dynamic of the fact that you have different parents on other sides that are contributing to the rules that they have to follow and the habits that they're making. You throw into the mix the power dynamic of trying to build a relationship with new people that aren't your bio kids. Mm-hmm. You throw in all of those things, and man, this can be really tough. And it can be a super challenge. And there's byproducts that can come from it if you do it wrong. For example, if you become the Cinderella evil stepmother who's disciplining and being terrible and those things, resentment and all of those things are going to form, which at the end of the day, everybody's looking for harmony, right? You want to have a great relationship with your kids, with your new kids. Mm-hmm. You want to have a great relationship with your new spouse or, new significant other, whatever that might be. And it's really, really tricky to do.
It's super tricky. I think what might be interesting is if we explore where we came from, because like we said, we're not experts. We didn't walk into this being an expert. I will say, I feel like we are becoming extremely knowledgeable because we've had 10 years of experience here, but we had different outlooks. We were also being told different things from different people, friends, people who may not have even had that situation of what you should do as a step parent in blending your family, and you should
and Summer and I have had very different views on how things should be done.
Totally.
Let's flash back, say right now our kids are 16,
13,
and
almost 12.
Almost 12. And so now the dynamic of discipline and those kind of things is different. And I can tell you, I think because of the length of time, we've got it down pretty good in terms of the things that are acceptable here. But let's go back to when they were just getting to know each other when they were little, 7, 5, 5, and 4, or whatever when they were little kids.
We had a different opinion. So I actually was being told by some people, you need to discipline your stepchildren, and you need to this and you need to that, make them respect you. And I do agree with the whole, you want to have that respect, especially as an adult. But there's a great saying that says, rules without a relationship will lead to rebellion. And that is just so true. And if you think about it, if you're just, somebody coming into their life and all of a sudden you're just creating, hey, by the way, nice to meet you. Here are the rules. and here's what's going to happen. And I'm going to discipline you. And I've got all these consequences lined up when you don't behave the way I want you to behave. I mean, that's just oh. And if you think about it as a parent, when you first have a babysitter that comes over, you really, at the beginning, you just want your kids to like the babysitter because you're leaving them with this person and you want them to have a good time because hopefully that same babysitter is going to be awesome and get to come back so that you can go do things. But if your kids are dreading seeing that babysitter because they're so, strict on rules and discipline, then it's not going to be so much fun. So when a babysitter usually first comes.
But you want the balance too. You don't want the babysitter.
Well, I'm getting into that. That's what I'm getting into is that, usually in a successful relationship between a babysitter and child, that babysitter comes and starts to ease out, kind of eases their way into it with, hey, what do you like to play with? Or what kind of games do you like to do? Or what do you like to watch on TV? What would be a good movie? And you have the support, this is key, the support of the parent saying, okay, little Johnny, now Samantha here is going to make sure that you're in bed by 9 o'clock. So that Samantha's in charge here tonight. Got that? Okay. But there's this building of a relationship of having fun together before all of that comes into place. Now, the parent's going to say in front of Samantha, hey, Samantha, Johnny's not allowed to have too much sugar, or Johnny's not allowed to jump on the bed, or whatever those things are. So the babysitter can say, if that happens, hey, remember your mom said, in a very nice way. Now, as that relationship starts to grow and the child has that respect and has that connection with that babysitter, there's more disciplining that starts to happen. Hey, Johnny, sorry, remember your mom said no jumping on the bed, so now I have to take away your iPad. and there's things like that will happen, but you have to ease into it. And I think that quote is so great because at the very beginning, if you're just like, oh, you're jumping on the bed, iPad's gone. That kid's going to be like, whoa, you just like came in. This is the first night I'm meeting you and I don't want to see you again.
And it's not like that. It's like life happens between events. So it could be like everything's super good. And then all of a sudden there's something that happens. I think like in our relationship, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I would take more of a lead in doing the same discipline that I would do with Justin and Ashlyn as I would do with Logan and Chloe to a point. To the point where, okay, if I do this now, I'm going to jeopardize my relationship. So I would do whatever it is to stabilize the situation. It's not like you just are like, hey, our house rule is running through that. You're not allowed to run through the house with scissors. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to be the bad guy. I'll just let him run through the house with scissors. Obviously, this is, an analogy of like how things are sometimes done. But you'd say, hey, you can't run through the house with scissors. You're going to have to be in trouble now. We're going to need to talk to your mom, and you guys are going to have to figure out what that looks like for you. Where Summer, I think, would be a little bit more pulled back, and she would be kind of like, hey, Mike, the kids are running through the house with scissors. You need to make sure that they stop doing that. You were definitely more pulled back in terms of...
I was definitely more pulled back, and this is, times we would disagree because there were times where Mike would be like, I want you to be more firm and stern with...
Yeah, be like, tell him to stop running through the house with scissors.
Yeah.
And she's
and I
like,
would be...
no, I'm going to leave that for you because the relationship that I have with them is more important. And I don't feel like I'm on a firm foundation right now.
Yeah.
You didn't want
I didn't want to jeopardize it. I wanted to keep being like a peer to them and, somebody who could be a role model, but not necessarily an authority figure unless, dad's out of town. And there were some... there were times where I would have to step in like a babysitter would, type of a thing. But it did feel uncomfortable. And so...
There's been times like, hey, we need to call your dad.
Yeah. And there were times where I'm like, well, I don't know that I like, oh my gosh, Mike's really disciplining Logan over something. And now I'm worried that Logan's going to have this issue with Mike. There were things like that we definitely had times.
When there were times, I remember on occasion, like it's such a weird feeling where you'd be like, can I talk to you for a second? And you're like, listen, the dynamics can be hard because you're kind of like, well, listen, this happened. This isn't okay. And this is how I would deal with it. And you're like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, don't disempower me right now. I'm in the middle of giving, a little lecture on how you're not allowed to set the house on fire. And and then you'd be like, hey, listen, you're coming down too hard on him. And I'm like, well, maybe. And, I don't know, like in those situations, it's kind of like, okay, well then you go deal with it. I didn't really want to anyway, but.
Yeah. So these are what we're basically telling you is like, these are the issues that we've dealt with and how we came up with these do's and don'ts that we're about to go into. So should we just go into it and then we can talk about like.
Yeah, let's just jump into it.
So the first thing is making sure that you have each other's back. So I think that some of the issues that we had together was going back to that whole, you've got to know, you've got to agree on what these rules are. So
this is for blended families or probably normal parents.
Well, of course. But especially in
not that blended families aren't normal. What I mean is non-blended families.
The thing is, like you were just saying, and that's why I kind of jumped into it, because this is probably one of our first do's is having each other's back. So if I disagree with how Mike is handling something, I can't disempower him in front of the kids because we're the captains here. So to do that makes them, of course, it's going to make them feel insecure, make them go, oh yeah, see, mom's on my side, or yeah, see, he did something wrong. And so the correct thing to do, it's going to play out. Or to take a brief moment or whatever you need later on and discuss it in private. That's an opportunity to say, okay, let's each express how this was handled.
Yeah. And so even before we get into this, I think there's one thing that's important to talk about, and that's have a clear understanding. You want to be captains of your ship. Mm-hmm. You don't just say, hey, we're going to set sail and we don't have a plan. We don't have a map. We don't have a compass. Mm-hmm. those things in this situation are having a clear understanding of your disciplinary style, of what's okay, what's not.
And that's number 2, actually.
Oh, well, hey, you know what? I'm jumping ahead.
It's really knowing the expectations and knowing what are those family rules. So what we have done, because these things have happened, and every single time, one thing we do well is that whenever something like this happens is we take it and we're like, okay, what's the lesson? What's the takeaway from here? What are we going to improve? What do we know that we're not going to do again? And we hear each other out. And so what we've done for years now, I would say, is Mike and I getting together and saying, okay, what are the rules we want them to go by? What are our rules? What are the things that are, you absolutely must adhere to this? You know, there's some things that the kids will have some pushback on, but there are a lot of things that it's just be kind to each other.
Respect.
Yeah,
like we don't allow like the kind of things where I think no kid, regardless of the situation, should be, the bullying, talking negatively,
of course,
bad things.
So
like those things are a zero. Those are like a zero go.
Yeah. So basically you agree together, what are these rules? And then what we would do is we would take those and then we would come up with consequences if those rules were broken, or warnings. How many warnings do you get? And then the next time, here's the consequence. And then what we would do is we'd all sit by, in the family room together, and we'd call the meeting. That's the and then the kids know. But we would say, okay, in the next 15 minutes, we're gonna have a family meeting. And so we would meet and go through the rules, and then we would ask for their feedback. And here was the kind of creative part: is we would say, what do you think the consequence should be? So we had ideas, but we would go, what do you think the consequence should be? And they would actually come up with it. Well, like if I'm mean, then I probably shouldn't get to play my video game.
Man, we've got a lot of buy-in too with that.
We do so much.
Because this was a long time ago. I feel like
this was a long time ago.
Once you can get everyone in alignment, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. But then you have to you refresh them, and because they change, the rules change, obviously, and consequences change as they get older. It's just really great because they come in with such apprehension, but then by the end you're like, oh, and it kind of becomes this challenge and almost like a fun thing because you're all on the same page with what these rules are. And then when you start to see things slip, that's when you have a meeting again. From this, they have the expectations. From this, they know, okay, stepmom or stepdad is going to enforce these, and my bio dad or bio mom just made it okay to do that. And so it adds like this level of respect. It also adds a level of, hey, I'm not out to get you. I'm just on your mom or dad's team, and we want to help you. And we always tell them, this is because we love you. This is because we're helping you to grow into the best adults you can be.
And remember I said there's byproducts of the things you do. Mm-hmm. The byproduct of doing this exercise is that they feel more connected to each other. They feel like they're actually all part of the same union.
Right.
And that part's pretty amazing. So you can do that through, doing fun things like we all go to the carnival together, yay. Or we all figure out our family rules together.
So the next one is don't give a consequence or something that isn't in alignment with what I'm talking from a step parent. Don't give a punishment or a consequence is the better word that isn't in alignment with what the bio parent would do, because going back to earlier in our conversation, that can cause a disagreement. So it's, again, being on that same page. So if bio parent is gone and you're watching, stepchild, and they've done something wrong, and the agreement was you have your TV privileges taken away, and all of a sudden you decide, well, I'm so mad about it, I'm also taking your phone and your devices and all that away. Then it's kind of like, ooh, now you're becoming that.
Or wait to do that part of it. You can say, okay, this stops now. These are the consequences temporarily, and when your bio person comes back, if you're trying to maintain that relationship, don't be the person that gives the actual punishment. You can be the jury and be like, hey, listen, you got to stop setting the house on fire now. And obviously you're going to be in trouble. And when your mom or your dad comes back, we're going to figure out what the punishment will be.
Which leads into the next one, which is, as much as you can, let the bio parent do most of that, discussion back and forth, and most of, I should say, leading the discipline. So it's not that the step parent can't, but especially if you're still building that relationship, let the bio parent do most of that. And so Mike, what he'll often do is if there was something that I had to step in on, I'll tell him later, and then he'll later have a talk with, say it's Justin or Ashlyn, and he'll sit down with them and talk to them. And then he'll bring me in later on so that it's like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all in a team. But he's the one that's really leading it because he is the biological parent.
But always refer back to number one, united front.
United front.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for taking a chance on us and listening to our podcast. Our goal is for you to not only learn from us, but to learn with us. We've taken a leap on being pretty open about our blended family and how we do life in everything. We want to make sure we bring you all the things you want to hear, always. So please, if you have specific questions like, how do I get along with my ex? Or how do I get along with his ex? Or how do I set some boundaries in place? Or why doesn't my stepson like me? Please email us with your questions. Email them to info@summerfelix.com because we want to answer those questions, and we aim to bring you the best guests and conversations to address your most burning issues about everything, always.
One thing that I always think of in the back of my mind as a step parent is thinking of myself as a parental figure and really being a role model. And that authority comes in, it's earned. I think it's really earned.
It's kind of like respect, right?
Yeah.
It's built in inches, can fall back in miles.
Right.
So making sure that you are under control of yourself and the situation and the way that you handle yourself.
Right.
We a saying that we have in our family is don't lose your cool, never let them see you sweat.
Right.
Right. You might be freaking furious. Take a minute, get yourself under control, right?
Yep.
Figure out how to deal with something in a way that's going to be positive and that's going to be constructive. Now, I know that there are people that are dealing with, like, I would say in terms of our disciplinary situation in our house,
Mm-hmm.
we've had some flare-ups that have been very traumatic, but we, for the most part, have had a relatively okay coexistence in terms of our family.
Yeah.
I know that there are parents out there that have situations that are freaking tough.
Really, really tough.
Really tough.
And
like kids that are like, will yell at their stepdad and be like, well, I'll wait till you're asleep. I'm going to hit you in the head with a bat.
Oh my gosh,
things
it's
that are
awful.
like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And in those situations, I think you have to use the same mentality, that same philosophy of, I have to create respect. I can't let things just happen. You can't just run through the house with scissors. But the action...
I'm just running through the house with scissors. I don't think
know,
any of our
because
kids have ever ran through the
I think all kids are not allowed to run with scissors.
Right. It's a good rule.
So kid running with scissors, you have to stop running with scissors.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is. But the situation needs to be that you need support. And I mean, in that situation where you have like the violent teenager,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, what do you do in that scenario? You
Right.
have to stop the situation regardless of what it might require calling the police.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting to extremes here, but I know, and I have some
this has
firsthand
happened.
situations of some people that I know that have had, that 16-year-old kid who is like really, really tough.
Yes.
You need to make sure that your house is safe.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure that yourself is safe. You need to set the fact that has to stop. The running with the scissors has to stop, but the dishing out of the discipline has to either come as a united front or from...
You have to be united because there's also the sibling rivalry that can happen when step kid hates other step sibling, and things can get pretty out of hand. So always have to be in that place where I know if I get overwhelmed with something or I feel like, okay, I remember like right in the beginning too, where I'm like, oh my gosh, these boys are not getting along or they're going through this period where they just hate each other and needing your support. So you have to like going into this, you've got to know that you will be there for each other to support each other because what an awful it can only imagine how awful it would be if you're in a position where it's like, well, it's because of your son. Well, no, it's because of your son. And if you've got to look, you got to step above and be the adult and realize that these are two people not getting along. They're two kids. We are the parents. How are we going to work together to support each other?
Those quotes that she's talking about right there, that's literally happened to us.
Oh yeah.
Where like there's been situations where like, man, like this is really a tough situation right now.
Mm-hmm.
There is like this animosity, and think of the, like the byproducts of those situations.
Yeah.
So your bio kid is totally not liking your new step kid.
Mm-hmm.
If you side with the step kid, you alienate your own kid. If you side with your kid, you're going to alienate the other one. So it's really this balance. It's really a tough thing to do.
Point. And that happens.
From the standpoint that you just have to be, hey, listen, I bring it back to love. Because love is one of those things that it's like, there's no measurement. There's no way to quantify it.
Right.
The thing is, you can say, listen, I love both of you. I love both of you different. I don't love one more than the other. You can love different at different levels at different time, and you're not gonna divide me between the two of you. And sometimes you just got to give those kids their ability to have their space, and it'll run its course.
It's true, and it does, and then you can revisit it later when everyone's calm. But the main thing, always back to that main thing, and I'll say it a billion times, is really keeping being on each other's side and being the adults. Be the adult. The blame game really doesn't get you anywhere. It really doesn't. I mean, it's your kid's fault. It's your kid. It's this, that. And if you're doing a bunch of that blame game, then maybe there's something else to be talked about in the whole relationship.
Figure it out. I mean, I would say the other thing, man, in families, when the parents fight in front of the kids. Yeah. And I can say this is one really great thing about Summer and I. On less than one hand, the number, not that we don't fight. She's Latin. She actually really loves.
So fiery.
She seems calm, cool, and collected, but man, she's got that half Puerto Rican, half Italian thing going on, and when she gets fired up, she is on fire. So, what I would say there, save that for your own private space. Stomach it if you have to, and just be like, or you know what, we're going to go have a little captain planning meeting for a minute. And I can already see the fire in her eyes when she does that.
Although I will say this, we have had, I would say, constructive arguments in front of our kids. I don't know if you'd call it an argument. There's no yelling. We don't, even when we are fighting, there's not ever yelling. But there's more
pointed conversation.
There's more like, okay, but there's sometimes where they should hear you and hear how you deal with a disagreement. I think that's actually really healthy, because if they never see any disagreement, then it's like...
Right, but I wouldn't put that in the argument category, because it never gets to the point of yelling or saying bad things or things to each other. And that we're really blessed because we don't have that dynamic. Right. Where we like to try to tear the other person down in order to like make a point, which I know a lot of people do. For those of you that like to do that, man, that's a whole nother conversation. But
not getting into that.
Yeah, we're not getting into that right now. But in terms of the communication in front of the kids and not fighting, save that for your own space. It will break down that dynamic of the united front.
It really it makes you stronger too, because just in real life, there's times where you just feel like, I'm so heated up. It's such a great lesson in being emotionally mature. When is the right time to deal with this? And sometimes you do have to suck it up. There was one last thing in terms of the do's, is going back to when we're talking about some stepchildren that might yell back at you, you're not my real mom, or you're not my real dad, or whatever, having some type of backlash with the discipline or with the authority that you're exercising, is to always make sure, don't bow down, which I may have done like way in the past, where I'm just like, okay, I shouldn't have said anything, Don't be a pushover, because you still need to have respect. At the end of the day, it's still your home or your space, and you are the adult. But respond in a very calm, rational way and be honest about it. Like, hey, that really hurt my feelings. I feel really disrespected when you say that. And remember, we talked about what these house rules were.
Really disarming. You could say, I'm not, but I do care about you, and I want us to have the best situation possible. And totally. What can someone say to that, when at the end, usually those feelings and those types of words come from a place of feeling insecure and feeling like they're out of control.
And if they come back with something else or whatever, you just quietly walk away and let them have their space at that time. But for the most, either way, and then you can talk about it later. That has happened. I mean, kids, especially just all of growing up, they can get really emotional. I mean, about so many different things, just school, just I want that toy, then leading up to teens, adolescents. I mean, there's so many things that actually are so much more glorified and seem like such a big deal. And because it's all relative, it's a big deal to them. But later, a day later, or maybe hours later, when things have calmed, you can look back at it and really learn from it and discuss it and go, okay, in this situation, like, what do you think we could have done differently? Or
that whole look back evaluation
will
create, it's kind of like, if you're adrift at sea, you can't really tell where you're going. But if you can look back and see the line from where you've come, the trail, you can tell the direction, right?
Yeah.
You can go, am I going left or am I going right? And it's just taking a quick minute after things have calmed to say, hey, could we talk for a minute? We had this interaction. You start with the I instead of the you, right? I perceived this. I felt this way. I understood that this was the situation. Can you tell me how you felt? How could we have done this better? And I know this sounds like really easy to do, right? We're sitting here like, but
no, it's not. We said it.
But if you can take time, and I know it's like one of those things where if you really want to build the dynamic that's going to be awesome, you take the time to go and do an evaluation, just like you would with a job, right? You have a job, you're given, a task to do. Your manager, your boss is going to come back and say, let's take a look at what you did. Let's evaluate the performance. How could we do this better? I mean, I know I do this in business.
I do this in business too. I mean, it's the only way to grow, right?
And the look back will then build your team to be better, more well-equipped, and ready for the next challenge in the future.
Above all, remember this, and this really applies to anything in life. As these challenges arise, with every single challenge, as icky and awful as it will feel, or as overwhelmed as you might feel, it is always an opportunity to make things better. Always.
It's true.
So just a quick recap on all of the things we discussed. That first saying, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. Just if you can think about that, sit with it, realize what that means to you and for your relationship with your kids and stepkids. It's so powerful. And just a summary of those do's and don'ts. Do make sure that you have each other's back. You and your spouse need to have each other's back. And if you disagree on something, settle it in private, not in front of the kids. The next one, do know the expectations. Agree on the rules with your spouse. And then as a family, sit down, the whole family, talk about the rules, define the rules, understand what the consequences are. Let them come up with what those consequences should be as well. You're a family unit here. While you guys are the captains and the authorities here, they still should have a say because you're still a team. You're a whole crew.
That's right. Get the buy-in of your crew.
Yes. Don't punish or do something that isn't in alignment with the bio parent. Again, being on the same page. Do let, as much as possible, the bio parent talk to their bio kids about disciplining and consequences and being the lead on that. The next, do ask your spouse for support when you feel overwhelmed, when things just feel so out of control and you don't know what to do. Ask your spouse for support. And the last, do stand up for yourself in a calm and rational way. If you are ever met with backlash from the kids, say something in a calm way that acknowledges your feelings and asks about their feelings as well.
Those are good to-dos and not to-dos.
I hope you guys got some good tips out of this. There is absolutely a PDF download if you want to have this, some easy access to this, and it's helpful to you. You can go over it with your spouse.
Where do they find this download?
If you go to summerfelix.com, right under, it'll either bring it up right away or you can click on the podcast tab and it'll pop up right there and you can download it. And please, guys,
take the opportunity to go to our podcast, like and share.
Like and share it. You can go to iTunes. You can click on the link. You can share it in your social media. This helps us tremendously.
For you
I do.
you non-Apple people out there.
Non-Apple people. Yeah, we've got.
You can go to SoundCloud. There's lots of other
places, and that's on summerfelix.com as well. You'll see all the places that it is where you can play it. You can also play it directly off the page there. And please write a review, star it, and write a little comment, anything that was awesome. If you don't think it's awesome, please don't write that comment.
Save those for yourself.
We love you guys, and we're so grateful that you're listening. Until next time.
Over and out. Take care of your crew. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to our podcast. You know what they say, if you can't find what you're looking for, then you need to create it. So that's what we did.
Yep, I scoured the internet and looked for the tribe that spoke to me, and I just couldn't find the community that was raw, vulnerable, and really wanting to make a change to the millions of families like ours. So I decided to create it. It took about one conversation for my husband to say, I'm in, and here we are.
But it takes listeners like you to keep it alive.
So please, if you like this, write a review, take a screenshot, share it on your social media. Tell people, it means the world to us.
Remember to email us. We would love to hear from you.
And please share this with someone you love.
And be bold enough to share it with someone that you don't.